This video will walk you through setting up the SureStitch Stitch Regulator to your quilting frame. This assembly process is for frames with a single wheel track only. If your frame has a dual wheel track, please see the SureStitch video for dual track frames. These videos and other resources can be found on our website at www.graceframe.com. These are the included parts needed to install your SureStitch to a single track frame. The control box, 2 encoders, one with a longer bolt and one with a shorter bolt, display console, display cord, sewing machine control cable, power cord, cable ties, tie mounts, and Velcro. You will need 2 tools for the SureStitch assembly, a 10mm open wrench and an M6 Allen wrench. Both of these tools should have come originally with your quilting frame. Your sewing machine and frame may be different than the ones used in this video. You may have carriages that have the wheels on the inside of the carriage. It is okay to modify the installation steps as needed for your frame. As you install the SureStitch, the important things to note are that the encoder wheels should turn as you move your carriage on the frame, and that the carriage can move freely in a full range of motion without pulling on any of the wires. It will be helpful to first decide where you want to place the control box. Ideal placement is on the back of the sewing machine or top carriage of the frame, but it can also be placed on the side. The important thing is to make sure that when it is installed with all of the wires attached, your carriage can move freely in all directions without snagging or pulling on the wires. To attach the control box, remove the backing from the adhesive and press the control box into place. The encoder with the longer bolt will be attached to the bottom carriage. First, remove a wheel and its spacers from the bottom carriage. Then remove the nut, washers, and cardboard spacer from the encoder. Hold the encoder with the encoder wheel pushed down so that the spring will not slide off. Insert the carriage wheel onto the encoder in place of the cardboard spacer, followed by any spacers that were with the wheel on the carriage originally. The encoder wheel should be centered with the carriage wheel on the encoder, and when one is turned, they should both turn smoothly. You may need to add or remove washers between the carriage wheel and encoder to make sure that both of the wheels are centered. Attach the encoder to the bottom carriage with the other washer and the nut on the inside of the carriage as shown. Just hand tighten the encoder until snug for now. Next, we'll attach the other encoder to the top carriage. Remove the back wheel on the side closest to where the control box will be. Now remove the nut, washers, and cardboard spacer from the encoder. Replace both washers, followed by the wheel, and any spacers from the carriage. Again, it is important to make sure the encoder wheel and carriage wheel are centered and both turn together. Now attach the encoder to the top carriage with the nut on the inside of the carriage as shown. Do not completely tighten the encoder yet, just tighten until it is snug. Now we'll place the bottom and top carriages on the frame. Make sure they roll smoothly and are not obstructed by the encoder wires. Adjust the top encoder so it sits at an angle as shown. Then tighten it in place. The bottom encoder needs to be slightly angled as well, but must allow the top carriage to move back and forth freely. When it's at a good angle, tighten it in place. Now we'll place a sewing machine onto the carriage and attach all the cables to the control box. Leave the sewing machine powered off until the SureStitch is completely installed. Connect the encoder cables to the bottom of the control box in a way that they don't become tangled. We'll use a zip tie and tie mount in this video to keep the cables clear and untangled. You can also use the included Velcro. We place one zip tie on the bottom carriage near the encoder and one on the top carriage near the control box. Then we secure the cable to the zip ties, making sure that the cable won't interfere with the carriage motion. We'll also cut the excess zip ties to keep the area neat and organized. The sewing machine control cable is plugged into the port for your sewing machine's foot pedal. The other end plugs into the side of the control box. The power cord plugs into the opposite side of the control box and an available outlet. Attach the display console to the front of the carriage handle using the Velcro strap. Line up the connectors in the display cord and the display console and connect them. We'll now wrap the display cord on the carriage handle to remove any excess slack. You could instead use the provided Velcro or zip ties to keep the cord neat and organized. The other end of the display cord plugs into the control box. Your SureStitch is now fully assembled and ready to stitch. Please see our tutorial video on how to use the SureStitch and learn its functions. If you need any help with your SureStitch, troubleshooting videos are available, or you can contact the Grace Company at 1-800-264-0644.